It was routine for Marshall to go on a business trip every summer, even if I'd just had a miscarriage. I couldn't help but secretly follow him. That's how I discovered that every year, during his so-called business trips, he was actually spending time with another woman and a child. What's even more absurd is that his parents, friends, and colleagues all helped him cover up this lie. For 5 years, I looked forward to having a child together. I poured my heart into building our home, and what did I get in return? As I waited for Marshall at the airport, I noticed the mother and child. The mother was elegant and had a gentle warmth about her. The little boy looked shy, clutching her clothes while staring intently at the little monkey charm hanging from my bag. It was a small fabric monkey Marshall had bought for me on our honeymoon. It was a bit worn out now, but I took it everywhere with me. He tugged at it slightly, making a soft buzzing sound. The mother gave me an apologetic look and gently pulled him close. "That belongs to the lady, sweetheart. Wait for Daddy to buy you one." The boy gave me a stubborn glare, his gaze still fixed on the little monkey. His mother sighed and patted his head before taking him to the other side. I felt a pang in my heart, my hand unconsciously moving to my abdomen. I was this close to becoming a mother. Just 2 weeks ago, an accidental fall had led to my miscarriage. Marshall and I had been married for 5 years, and we'd both been so excited about having a child. Every summer, he'd go on a month-long business trip, but I thought this year would be different. I had been counting on him to stay with me through this difficult time. But he only looked at me with a pained expression. "Camille, the tickets were booked over a month ago. Can't anyone else go in your place? You can see what I'm going through." He hesitated, looking at me for a long time, but eventually shook his head gently. To say I wasn't angry would be a lie. I couldn't resist my curiosity about what kind of job would make him leave his wife, who just had a miscarriage. So I bought a ticket for an earlier flight through other channels. I was anxious, worried about how he'd react if he saw me. Maybe he'd be shocked, maybe even angry. But I just wanted to be close to him, especially now when I felt most vulnerable. When the flight arrived, more and more people gathered at the arrival area. I stood at the edge, carefully shielding my still aching abdomen. Marshall was tall and easy to spot when he appeared. Just as I was about to wave, a child's high-pitched voice pierced the air. "Daddy!" The little boy shot toward him like an arrow, diving straight into his arms. Marshall smiled, reaching down to lift him high. With his free hand, he naturally held the woman's hand. My heart pounded wildly, and the ache in my abdomen seemed to spread throughout my body. The boy wrapped his arms around Marshall's neck, his voice soft and childlike. "Daddy, you haven't kissed Mommy yet." Marshall was bending down toward her when he caught sight of me out of the corner of his eye. He froze for a moment, but the woman was already leaning in, pressing a kiss to his lips. I stared blankly, a deafening voice echoing in my mind. "She's way better at this than I am." A few minutes later, Marshall and I stood facing each other outside the airport. Not far off, the mother and child looked over at us. His grip on my wrist was so tight that it hurt. I pulled away with some effort. His expression shifted slightly. "Why did you come here?" I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Turns out, anger really can make people laugh. "Business trip?" "Marshall, don't you think you owe me an explanation first?" He hesitated, glancing at the 2 people in the distance, a slight sheen of sweat forming on his forehead. I once donated sperm. She found me later. The woman's name was Elvira, and she ran a flower shop. The boy who had been glaring at me while nestled in her arms was named Osborne. Hearing that name made my blood run cold. Osborne. "Marshall, how could you?" When we were newlyweds, we'd written down a list of names together. Marshall had pointed at the 2 names I wrote, smiling with that warm expression of his. "For a boy, let's call him Osborne, and for a girl, Hillary." The memory seemed to hit him too, his face paled as he avoided my gaze. "Camille, I didn't think it through." He explained that Elvira had reached out only after their child was born. The boy was small and frequently in and out of the hospital. Elvira just wanted me to know how the child was doing, because she thought he might not make it. But, against all odds, the child survived. Elvira hoped I could spend some time with him occasionally so he wouldn't feel like he didn't have a father. A cold sensation crept up in my heart. Looking back, all this had been going on right under my nose since we got married. No wonder you had to go on a business trip every summer. He sighed. I only spend 1 month with him a year. We don't see each other outside of that. I reached for his phone, but he suddenly pulled it away, startled. Usually, his phone was just lying around, and he'd let me unlock it freely. Only now did I notice it was the same model, but in a different color, with a family photo tucked into the back of the case. Rage flooded my head in an instant. Without thinking, I raised my hand and slapped him hard. "Daddy!" Osborne screamed, breaking free and charging toward me. His small head rammed hard into my abdomen. Pain. I had never felt anything like it. I was rushed to a nearby hospital. Throughout the examination, my forehead and back were drenched in sweat, and I had to grit my teeth as I clutched my abdomen. Marshall held a frantic Osborne, but he couldn't stop the boy's little feet from kicking at me. He was shouting incoherently. "Don't hit my daddy, you bad woman." He had been calling me that the entire way here. Everyone stared at me with strange looks, and Marshall didn't say a word in my defense. Elvira nervously picked up Osborne and took him outside. A few minutes later, she returned alone, having likely guessed who I was. But it was as if they'd already agreed, neither said a word about it in front of others. The doctor advised me to rest in bed and left, closing the door behind him. Marshall tried to help me up, but I coldly brushed his hand away. His face darkened immediately. He looked at Elvira. "Take Osborne home. I need to talk to her." Those few words made his stance clear. The last shred of hope I had for him shattered into pieces. Elvira wouldn't leave, though. She looked at me pitifully. "I know you can't accept this, but I didn't mean any harm. I just want Osborne to have a complete childhood. We've always agreed to tell him that Daddy works far away and can only visit during the summer." She was about to kneel. "Please, I'm begging you, don't tell him anything." The other patients and their families looked at us curiously, murmuring among themselves. Someone muttered, "The one in bed is the mistress? That's pretty bold." Marshall heard it but only frowned, not saying a word. Looking at Elvira's helpless appearance, I understood why everyone here was siding with her. At this point, I could only rely on myself. I sat up, prying her fingers off the bedsheet one by one. "I've been married to him for 5 years. How old is your son?" In an instant, every accusatory gaze in the room turned to Marshall. Elvira knelt beside the bed, trembling, not daring to lift her head. I pulled the 4 out of my hand and stood up, feeling a bit dizzy. It seems people only grow up in the face of utter despair. I never knew I could be this fierce. "We've been married for 5 years, and you go on a month-long business trip every summer. Even this time, after my miscarriage, it didn't stop you from going on that so-called business trip. So, you've been hiding a son from me all this time, Marshall. How could I not have known you were so good at time management? And you?" I locked eyes with Elvira. "Choosing a sperm donor is one thing, but why did you come looking for him? You say you didn't want anything, but then you publicly kissed a married man?" My voice grew louder with every word. "Who knows what you two are doing when I'm not around? Camille, that's enough. I never expected the man I dated for 3 years and been married to for 5 would step in to defend someone else. Elvira doesn't want to fight with you. We're only doing this for the child." I couldn't understand how he could shamelessly say such words. One arm shielding the woman behind him, he looked at me with a heartfelt expression. "It's only 1 month out of the year, the rest of my life is yours. When Osborne turns 18, we'll tell him the truth." Elvira's timid voice emerged behind him. "It's only for a month, and once the child grows up, he won't disturb you anymore. She used you, not you all." I could hear her careful intent hidden in her words. Suddenly, Osborne ran into the room, diving straight into Elvira's arms. He waved my cloth monkey in his hand, tauntingly shaking it at me. Marshall recognized it and reached out, frowning, trying to take it back. "That's Auntie's. Give it back to her, Osborne. Be good." I stood up, watching coldly as the child twisted around in her arms. "No need. Keep it. A kid who can't keep his hands off things like this probably needs more than just a mother to raise him." Marshall reached out to pull me back, but I brushed him off like he was a live wire. "Don't touch me. Stay far away when lightning strikes. There's no need to sneak around anymore. There's nothing left here worth fighting for." I walked out of the hospital room all the way to the street, with Marshall trailing me the whole time. I wanted to tell him to go away, but I didn't have the strength. Elvira chased after us, out of breath, with the child in her arms. Osborne was wailing. Marshall had taken the cloth monkey away from him. All the noise was driving me mad. Marshall, undeterred, kept trying to grab my wrist. In a trembling voice, he pleaded, "Camille, can we go back and talk this over?" I finally stopped, looking straight at him. "Besides me catching you in the act, who else knows about this?" He avoided my gaze, looking embarrassed and tense, but I already knew the answer. His parents knew. His friends knew. Maybe even some of his colleagues at the company knew. They covered for him every time he was on one of those business trips. It was pathetic. So, the company downturn and cancelled vacation time, those were all lies? Even the fact that your salary got cut by a third was fake? He suddenly looked impatient. "Camille, I've never denied you anything you've wanted, have I?" Of course. He had every right to feel so self-righteous. Even at my friends' gatherings, when someone joked about him not loving me enough. About not handing over his salary card. He always shrugged it off with, "I just don't want Camille worrying about finances." If he'd been honest from the start, would things have escalated like this? I took a few deep breaths to calm my chaotic mind. "I'll be in touch with a lawyer to draft the divorce papers soon." He looked at me in disbelief. "Over something so small?" "Camille, this child was from before we got married, and my feelings for you." I interrupted him, swallowing back the nausea rising within me. "Our income during marriage is joint property. Every cent you siphoned away, I'll take back." I said this while looking directly at Elvira. Her expression changed, but she forced a weak smile. "I'm not in it for the money. I haven't touched a single cent, I can return it all to him." I sneered. "You'd better." I took a flight back alone, having already contacted a lawyer before boarding. Marshall tried to follow me back, but Osborne clung to him, refusing to let go. The child cried until his face was red, coughing between breaths. The two of them panicked, patting his back and pinching his acupoints. Amid the chaos, I passed through security with a cold indifference. Before shutting off my phone, I called my former boss and asked if they were hiring. He was caught in the middle of rush hour traffic and shouted over the noise, "If you want to come back, you're always welcome." I felt a surge of gratitude, welling up as tears of appreciation. Half a year ago, on Marshall's advice, I resigned to focus on preparing for pregnancy. Then, half a month ago, I had a miscarriage, and I was plunged into an abyss of sorrow. That feeling of isolation and abandonment wrapped around me, lingering. And Marshall had remained composed through it all. It was as if the sorrow had nothing to do with him, as if the life we had long awaited wasn't gone. By the time the plane landed, it was the middle of the night. I dragged myself out, exhausted, and saw my best friend Kristen and her husband, red-eyed, waiting outside. Kristen rushed forward without a word, hugging me tightly. All the emotions I'd held back on the flight erupted as I cried uncontrollably on her shoulder. Kristen's husband, Reg, was both our friend and the lawyer I'd asked to help with the divorce. He was at a loss, explaining that he had known nothing of this. I believed him. Marshall wouldn't have dared let Kristen find out. She had disliked him since we started dating, urging me to break up countless times. Now she was angrily punching my back. "What did I tell you? You'd never be able to outplay someone like him." They drove me home, and my phone kept ringing. Marshall was calling, his parents were calling. Kristen frowned and shut my phone off. "Unless it's about the divorce, don't answer." I felt utterly drained. When I lost the baby, his parents had tearfully comforted me. But knowing now that they were aware of Osborne's existence all along, it felt like my entire world had flipped upside down, as if I'd been the only fool in the room. Something clicked in my mind. A chill ran down my spine as I gripped Kristen's hand. "Tomorrow, come with me to the hospital." I had gone to the maternity hospital for all my checkups. After leaving the doctor's office, I could barely stop my hands and feet from trembling. Kristen was pale with fury, cursing out every expletive she knew. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. "Your husband brought your medical records, and a young boy, too." Kristen widened her eyes, gripping my shoulders. "I just don't understand how he could do something like this behind your back." Osborne wasn't just weak after birth, he had thalassemia. No wonder Marshall was so insistent on me leaving my job to focus on my health. He had planned all along to use my child to treat that boy. When I got home, Marshall was already there. It looked like he hadn't slept all night, with dark circles under his eyes, his shirt rumpled. Even his voice sounded weary and defeated. "Camille, I'm back. I'll stay with you this month." Calmly, I changed my shoes, pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared, and set them in front of him. He ignored them, scrolling through his phone instead. "Didn't you say you wanted to go to the beach? Let's book a trip and take a break." He handed me a bag he had beside him. "The bag you wanted, I had it brought over. I was saving it as a surprise for our anniversary." I placed a black pen in front of him. He stopped mid-sentence, quickly looking up at me. "Are you serious? Aren't I making myself clear? The child came before the marriage. I just donated twice. I didn't even know who she was before Osborne was born." He rubbed his temples in frustration. "If you don't like it, I won't see her again." I laughed. Once I started, I couldn't stop. I laughed so hard I doubled over, tears streaming down my face. "Marshall, when I was pregnant, you were hoping for my umbilical cord blood, weren't you? With it, you could save Osborne." His face turned ghostly pale, his gaze fixed on me. "Camille, you. How did I find out?" I asked the doctor. "She said you'd been inquiring, couldn't wait to get the answer. If Osborne hadn't stabilized, would you have been crushed by my miscarriage?" I slowly took off my wedding ring and tossed it onto the table, where it rolled onto the floor. I was the only one waiting with my heart full of joy for our child to be born. "Marshall, you're not fit to be a father. If you have a shred of humanity left, sign the papers. Sharing a roof with you makes me sick." Marshall proactively reached out to Reg to modify our divorce agreement. He willingly gave up all marital assets, both the house and car are mine now. The agreement Reg brought back already had Marshall's signature. Reg told me, he regrets it. He feels he overcomplicated what should have been simple. I don't know the specifics of their conversation, but Reg mentioned that Marshall cried. He still wants to make things right with you. He's even willing to give up all his assets. Kristen spat, glaring at him, "Don't relay his messages, it's disgusting enough." Reg scratched his head, looking embarrassed. "I'm just passing along the message, I don't have a stance." The day after signing, Marshall moved out of the house. He sent me several messages as he was leaving. He first tried calling, but I declined the calls. "I know you don't want to see me right now. I've moved to a hotel near my office. Please stay at home and take care of yourself. Otherwise, I'll keep worrying." I didn't mean for things to happen that way. She brought up the cord blood, and I just casually asked the doctor. "Camille, like you, I've always looked forward to the child we dreamed of. That's never changed." I deleted each one, feeling insulted by their presence on my phone. News of our divorce spread quickly. His parents rushed over to my parents' house with bags of gifts, reportedly very apologetic. But my parents chased them off with a broom. When my dad called me afterward, he was still fuming. "They're old enough to know better. If they really wanted to help, they should have come to talk to you directly. Why come to us first?" My parents had always liked Marshall, saying he looked decent and was successful. But when it came to my divorce, they were unusually supportive of me. Especially after hearing about the cord blood incident, my dad went from calling him son-in-law to idiot. What I didn't expect was for Elvira to show up. That unruly boy, just like at the airport, charged straight at me, demanding harshly, "Where's my dad? Where did you hide him?" He threw a ragged stuffed monkey on the ground in front of me, stomping on it furiously. "Take it back. Who wants your stupid stuff?" Then he started pounding on my door, yelling, "Dad, come out. It's me, Osborne." I stared at Elvira with incredulity. Her face was flushed with embarrassment, but the resentment in her eyes was unmistakable. With one arm around Osborne, she muttered quietly, "The kid wants to see his dad." I had no choice. "He's not answering my calls anymore." I smiled and pulled out my phone. "Would you like me to call him for you?" She looked at me, hopeful. "If he'd come, that would be great. I just want him to talk to Osborne properly." My smile faded, leaving only a cold stare. And why should I? I have no obligation to get involved in your matters. The color drained from her face as she straightened up. Miss Camille, must you hold a grudge against a child? Her gaze drifted to my abdomen with a barely concealed malice. You almost became a mother yourself. Don't you understand a mother would do anything for her child? I looked at her, almost amused. Including using him as a bargaining chip, repeatedly destroying someone else's family? Elvira, I'm curious, why did you even decide to have him in the first place? Before he was born, you had no idea who his father was, did you? I stepped closer, watching her grow nervous and uneasy. Privacy policies prevent agencies from revealing personal information. So, how did you find Marshall? I had no intention of protecting Marshall's privacy, I was simply curious. Her face turned bright red as she covered Osborne's ears, mumbling. I just wanted him to be healthy. I never meant to hurt you. I thought back to the kiss she'd so confidently planted at the airport. And couldn't help but laugh as I crouched down, carefully smoothing the wrinkles on Osborne's clothes. Answer one question for me, and I'll tell you where your dad is. Osborne brushed his mom's hand away, asking in a muffled voice, really? I nodded. Tell me, where does your dad sleep when he visits you? Elvira tried to cover his mouth, but it was too late. Of course, he sleeps with my mom. I looked at Osborne, who was defiantly staring back, and hit the speakerphone button. Marshall's voice immediately came through, sounding frantic. Camille, let me explain. It's not what you think. Osborne, hearing his voice, tried to grab my phone, shouting. Dad, it's Osborne. Where are you, Dad? When he couldn't reach, he started kicking and hitting me in frustration. This time, I didn't indulge him. I grabbed him by the collar, pulling him back. What are you doing? Elvira quickly caught him, holding him close as she glared at me. I gave a mirthless laugh and spoke firmly into the phone. Come over here and get your son from my door. And one more thing, Marshall, if she ever comes to me again, I won't hesitate to let more people know about your child. I hung up and unlocked the door. Osborne kept screaming and crying as the door slammed shut, shutting them both out. Marshall didn't show up, his parents did instead. They knocked politely for a while, but I ignored them, focusing on cooking myself some noodles. I turned the TV volume all the way up, tuning out the noise outside. Eventually, the commotion died down. While eating, I told Kristen and her husband what had happened, treating it like gossip. Kristen sneered, what a coward, sending his parents to take the heat. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen and replied to my old boss about starting the new job. Then I went to my closet to pick out a suitable outfit for work. Opening the wardrobe, I saw a row of Marshall's clothes. I hesitated. He left in a hurry, only taking a few changes of clothes. Or maybe he thought our divorce wasn't final yet. An idea came to mind. I snapped a photo and sent it to him. I won't be home tomorrow. Come pick up your things, or I'll throw them out. The chat showed him typing, but he never sent a message. Instead, I received a friend request with a note. If you were truly happy, he wouldn't come looking for us every year. I didn't accept it. I took a screenshot and posted it on Facebook. I recalled something Kristen had once said. Some men start losing their integrity after a breakup. Even friends I hadn't spoken to in years left comments, calling him out. Of all the breakups, yours is the last one we'd expect. Marshall chased after Camille so hard back then, and now he's the one betraying her? It seemed he hadn't slept all night, sending message after message. The top one had only a few words. My love, I never meant to hurt you. It felt like a person stabbing you repeatedly, then sadly claiming they didn't know it would hurt, bleed, or kill. I gathered myself, put on a new outfit, and headed to my first day at the new job. On the way, I thought a lot. Since we started dating, I'd intertwined my life with Marshall so completely. Only now could I step back and see things clearly. No longer defining myself as someone's wife, but as myself, observing everything that had happened. I saw his indecision from the start. And how he never fully understood the pain he was causing. The collapse of trust and the fading of love happened faster than either of us had imagined. When I got home after work, it didn't look like Marshall had come by. I rolled up my sleeves and tossed his belongings into bags, one item at a time. I left the bags outside and took a photo to send him. I added a message, reminding him to be on time for the divorce finalization. Then, without hesitation, I deleted him from my contacts. Not blocked, just erased. Every trace of our past love was completely wiped away. On my second day at the new company, the receptionist called out to say there was a flower delivery for me. A bouquet of blood-red roses wrapped with irises, with no card left behind. I glanced at it and threw it straight into the trash can nearby. After that, an identical bouquet arrived every day. On the 10th day, I pulled out the flower shop's number I'd found and dialed. The call was quickly answered, and Elvira's gentle voice came through. "Hello, this is OS Florist." Holding back my emotions, I spoke each word clearly. "The day after tomorrow, I'm finalizing the divorce." "Are you really that eager?" she stammered, sounding as startled as a frightened rabbit. "You're really misunderstanding me." I just wanted to help him." I let out a bitter laugh. "You two are something else, calling it helping each other while sneaking around. Did you ever ask Marshall before pulling this stunt? Has he ever sent me flowers before? I'm allergic to pollen, and back when Marshall was pursuing me, he knew it well and never crossed the line." Elvira went silent for a moment. "Osborne's sick, and the child really needs him now. He's been at the hospital, never leaving his side. Camille, the child is innocent." I didn't listen further and hung up immediately. If it were any other child, I might have thought of the one that briefly stayed in my womb. But Osborne couldn't stir up any sympathy in me. Innocent? I was innocent, and so was my unborn child. The cooling-off period had ended, but Marshall was late. A slight sheen of sweat covered his forehead as he hesitated on the steps. I glanced at him and walked inside, and he sighed, following close behind. "Camille, this is for you." He fumbled in his pocket and pulled out a cloth monkey, still with its original tag. It looked exactly like the one I used to have. During our honeymoon, we'd gone to a rather obscure town. The cloth monkey was handmade, not something mass-produced. He muttered, "I went all the way there." Luckily, the person was still around. His hand remained outstretched, his eyes full of longing as he stared at me. I pressed my lips together. "Let's go." I only took 2 hours off. I didn't reach out to take it, even though it looked just like my old one. When it came time to sign, Marshall held my hand. Perhaps my cold gaze stung him, and he awkwardly lowered his head. "Camille, can't we reconsider? You know I love you." I withdrew my hand and quickly signed my name. As I tossed him the pen, I couldn't help but laugh genuinely. "Marshall, if you'd considered my feelings even once in the past 5 years, we wouldn't have ended up here." He'd had countless opportunities to come clean. Countless moments to turn back. He stayed silent, his hand trembling as he gripped the pen. Tears splattered onto the paper. He hastily looked away, raising a hand to cover his face. His usually neat handwriting was a mess that day. As I left, he called out to me in a pitiful voice. "Camille, will you ever forgive me?" I paused, turning to see the faint hope in his eyes. "If karma really exists, I hope every lightning bolt finds you. I don't have that kind of forgiveness. I loved deeply and hated just as fiercely. If luck in love fails, maybe success in career compensates." My boss was soon smug about his wise decision. After a promotion and raise, work was slow, so he offered me a long vacation. Kristen and I jumped at the chance and booked a spontaneous trip. We basked on the beach, enjoying late-night drinks. The day before we were set to leave, it started to drizzle. The beach was sparsely populated, giving a calm, relaxed vibe. A child's piercing cries shattered the peace. Kristen and I looked over and were both slightly stunned. Osborne lay sprawled on the sand, throwing a tantrum and kicking up sand everywhere. He was yelling, "I don't want to go back, I just want to dig in the sand." Standing helplessly in front of him was Elvira. Beside them, visibly irritated, was my ex-husband whom I hadn't seen in months. The noise drew attention, and Marshall looked around awkwardly. The moment he caught my gaze, he seemed frozen in place. Then he walked toward me. From behind him, I saw Elvira's face darken momentarily. Marshall looked at me uncomfortably. "You've moved, haven't you?" I went by a few times. This wasn't the time to catch up, so I kept a cold face and ignored him. He looked down sheepishly, his fingers unconsciously tracing the ring on his ring finger. It was still our wedding ring. A bit too obvious. Kristen snickered, mocking him. Nice to see you've got time off, sir, bringing the kid out for fun? Marshall quickly glanced at me, his face flushing slightly. I quit. I didn't expose him. Reg had mentioned he was having a rough time recently, losing several projects. First, they reassigned him, then cut his salary. He probably quit out of pride. Elvira walked over, holding the child, pressing close to his arm. There was a hint of challenge in her eyes, though a faint smile played on her lips. Such a coincidence, running into each other like this. Marshall's face darkened, and he stepped aside to put distance between them. The smile on her face vanished, replaced by a glint of resentment as she looked at me. Osborne was yelling for Marshall to hold him, but he acted as if he didn't hear. The child furiously waved his hand at me. You're a bad woman. I smiled at him and said, word by word. Say it again, and the bad woman will tear your little mouth apart. He tried to speak, but Elvira quickly covered his mouth. Marshall looked utterly exhausted. You two go back first. The coldness in his voice made Elvira's expression change, but she just clenched her jaw and turned away. Marshall kept his eyes on me, as if summoning a tremendous amount of courage. Camille, can we talk? I stood still. Say what you need to hear. Kristen also stood by, arms crossed, amused as she watched. Marshall sighed. Osborne, the child's had several relapses. She keeps pushing for another child. I laughed. Congratulations. Isn't playing instant father exactly what you love? His face turned red, then pale. Camille, you know I don't love her. I don't want to force myself into anything just for a child. He looked at me, practically pleading. Even if I was wrong, don't I deserve a second chance at happiness? I resisted the urge to respond harshly and just nodded indifferently. You still have a lot to learn about rising from failure and spilled milk. The light in his eyes dimmed, and he stammered. I miss what we had. Everything was moving toward what we wanted. Kristen cut off his reminiscing. You might want to check on your bargain bin son, he looks like he's in a fight. 2 kids were wrestling on the beach. Elvira kept shrieking, don't touch my son, he's sick. But it was Osborne, sitting on the other kid, pulling and biting. All because he wanted the toy in the other child's hand, he'd rushed over and pushed them down. Marshall awkwardly separated the two, apologizing repeatedly. But the other child's parents, young and hot-headed, grabbed his collar, and a scuffle broke out. Kristen and I turned to leave. The rain intensified, and behind us, the shouting and screams grew louder. More and more people passed us, rushing toward the beach. Soaked, I went straight to shower when we got back to the hotel. My phone kept vibrating by the bedside. Kristen was video calling Reg, exchanging sweet words. I don't even remember when I fell asleep. Only that in the middle of the night, lightning flashed and thunder rolled, illuminating the sky. In the morning, when we went to check out, the lobby was abuzz with whispers. Did you hear? A man and woman died on the beach yesterday. It was a fight, apparently. Someone went back for a knife. The guy had it bad, the medics were already there, and then he got struck by lightning several times. They say the woman started it, someone saw her come back with a knife. There was also a child taken to the hospital. No idea if he made it. I glanced distantly at the beach outside. A crowd had gathered, and I couldn't see what was happening inside. My phone had several missed calls from a number that looked familiar. Without giving it much thought, I checked out of the hotel and pulled Kristen along to the airport. As we passed the beach, something shiny caught my eye on the ground. I couldn't help but stop and look down. It was Marshall's wedding ring, lying alone in the sand. Kristen answered a call, her face turning pale as she looked at me. Reg said, Marshall, he. I looked out at the calm sea, no one could tell how wild it had been the night before. It felt as if the pain was slowly ebbing away with the waves. I stepped over the ring and kept walking. Let's go home. We'll miss the flight if we don't. Turns out, there really is karma in this world. The end.